Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Mark Whitmore straightened his tie as the elevator climbed to the executive floor of Whitmore Logistics. The quarterly earnings report sat in his hand, the numbers exceeding projections by 17%. Not bad for a company he'd built himself, despite having access to his family's fortune. The achievement tasted sweeter knowing it came from his own sweat and strategic thinking. His executive assistant, Rebecca, greeted him with a nod. "The board is impressed with the numbers, Mr. Whitmore. They've already signed off on the expansion." "Perfect timing," Mark said, checking his watch. 2:30, 3 hours earlier than he normally left the office. "I'm heading out early today." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Is everything all right?" "Better than all right. It's my 5th anniversary with Tessa. I thought I'd surprise her." "That's thoughtful of you. Should I have flowers sent to your home?" Mark shook his head. "Already arranged." "Thanks, Rebecca. I'll see you tomorrow." The drive home took 30 minutes, traffic unusually light for a Thursday afternoon. Mark turned into the quiet, upscale neighborhood where perfectly manicured lawns surrounded multi-million-dollar homes. Their house, a modern architectural masterpiece with clean lines and expansive windows, stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, offering privacy and exclusivity. He pulled into the driveway, quietly, noticing Tessa's white Mercedes already parked in its usual spot. Perfect. She was home. Mark grabbed the small blue Tiffany bag from the passenger seat. Inside sat a platinum bracelet with 5 diamonds, one for each year of marriage. The flowers he'd ordered had already been delivered and placed on the entryway table by their housekeeper. He picked them up, a smile playing on his lips as he pictured Tessa's surprised expression. Mark entered through the side door, wanting to maximize the surprise. He moved quietly through the hallway, hearing Tessa's voice from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone animated in a way she rarely was with him anymore. "I'm telling you, Aubrey, marriage is a complete nightmare." Tessa's voice carried clearly. "I wake up every day regretting my decision." Mark froze, the flowers suddenly heavy in his hands. "If it wasn't for his family's money, I'd be gone already," Tessa continued with a harsh laugh. "But I need to be smart about this. The prenup is tight, but Matt mentioned there might be ways around it if I stick it out long enough." His brother's name in her mouth felt like a violation. Mark remained perfectly still, his breathing shallow. No, he doesn't suspect anything. Men like Mark are so focused on their precious companies, they don't notice what's happening right under their noses. "Leo and I have been careful." Mark's jaw tightened, a cold sensation spreading through his chest. "Leo, the personal trainer she'd hired 6 months ago. Listen, I need to go. Mark will be home in a few hours, and I need to prepare myself to act like the devoted wife." She laughed again. "Yes, exactly. Oscar-worthy performance every night. Talk later." Mark stepped back silently, his mind racing but his body eerily calm. He returned to his car, placed the flowers and the Tiffany bag in the trunk, and drove to a nearby park. He sat on a bench, staring at nothing for nearly 2 hours, the conversation replaying in his mind. 5 years. 5 years of what he thought was building a life with someone who shared his values and ambitions. 5 years wasted on a woman who saw him as nothing but a bank account. His phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" Mark typed back, "Yes. Looking forward to seeing you." By the time he returned home at his usual hour, his face betrayed nothing of what he'd learned. His mind, however, had already begun formulating a plan. "There you are," Tessa said, greeting him with a kiss. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. "How was your day?" "Productive," Mark replied, studying her face. Had her smile always been this artificial? The board approved the expansion. "That's wonderful," she said, her hand resting on his chest. "We should celebrate." Mark matched her false smile. "We absolutely should." Over dinner, he watched her perform the role of supportive wife, asking about his day, offering encouraging comments about his business decisions. He answered her questions, all while cataloging every micro-expression, every calculated gesture. "Is something wrong?" Tessa asked, tilting her head. "You seem distracted." Mark took a sip of water. "Just thinking about work." The expansion means I'll need to restructure some departments. You'll figure it out. You always do, she said, reaching for his hand across the table that he let her take it, fighting the urge to pull away. Yes, he agreed. I always figure things out eventually. That night, as Tessa slept beside him, Mark stared at the ceiling, anger coiling inside him like spring. He wouldn't just leave her. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a clean break and whatever settlement she might squeeze from him despite the prenup. And Mark decided, she had played him, manipulated him, betrayed him in the most fundamental way. She deserved to lose everything, and he would make sure she did. The next morning, Mark maintained his routine with military precision. He showered, dressed in his usual tailored suit, and ate the breakfast Tessa prepared. He kissed her goodbye as if nothing had changed. Once in his car, he called his assistant. "Rebecca, I need you to clear my calendar after 2 today. Something's come up." "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Is everything all right?" "It will be," he said, ending the call at precisely 2 o'clock. Mark left his office and drove to an unmarked building downtown. The sign on the door read Peterson Security Consulting. He entered without an appointment. The receptionist recognized him immediately. "Mr. Whitmore, good to see you again. Is this about the corporate security assessment?" "Not today, Karen. Is Thomas available?" "Let me check." She made a quick call, then nodded. "He'll see you now." Thomas Peterson was a former FBI agent who'd built a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. His private security firm handled everything from corporate espionage investigations to personal security details. "Mark," Thomas said, rising from behind his desk. "Wasn't expecting you today. This isn't a scheduled visit," Mark replied, taking a seat across from him. "I need your services for a personal matter." Thomas's expression remained neutral. "I'm listening. I need surveillance on my wife." If Thomas was surprised, he didn't show it. "What kind of surveillance are we talking about?" "Phone records, text messages, emails, bank statements. I want to know where she goes, who she meets, what they do." Thomas leaned back in his chair. "May I ask why?" "I have reason to believe she's having an affair." "I see." Thomas opened a drawer and pulled out a form. "This stays between us. My team is discreet. I need this to be completely confidential. No one can know, especially not my family." "That's standard operating procedure, Mark. We'll start immediately. I'll need her full name, daily routine, and any information you have on the suspected affair partner." Mark provided the details, including what little he knew about Leo Merrick. "How soon can you give me information?" "Give us 3 days for the initial report. Longer for comprehensive surveillance." Mark nodded. "I'll be in touch." For the next 3 days, Mark played the role of oblivious husband perfectly. He left for work at the same time, called Tessa at lunch as he always did, and returned home each evening to ask about her day. Each lie she told was mentally recorded, filed away as evidence of her duplicity. That on Friday morning, an encrypted email arrived from Thomas. Mark waited until he was alone in his office to open it. The report was meticulous. Phone records showed Tessa called a number belonging to Leo Merrick multiple times each day. Text messages which Thomas's team had somehow accessed revealed explicit exchanges and coordinated meeting times. Bank statements showed payments to Leo's personal account, labeled as personal training sessions, but occurring far more frequently than any legitimate training schedule would require. Most damning were the photos. Tessa entering a mid-range hotel, followed by Leo 15 minutes later. Tessa and Leo in a cafe, their hands intertwined across the table. Tessa kissing Leo in her car, parked in an underground garage. Mark stared at the images, his anger no longer hot but ice cold. Calculated. He forwarded the report to his private email, then deleted the original message. That evening at dinner, Mark decided to test Tessa. "I've been thinking," he said casually, "we should take a vacation next month. Maybe somewhere tropical." Tessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That sounds wonderful, but what about your expansion plans? Won't you be busy?" "I can delegate. It's important to make time for us." "Of course," she agreed. "Let me check my schedule. I have those charity events coming up." Mark nodded, knowing from the surveillance report that she had planned to meet Leo for a weekend away during the exact time frame he'd suggested. You seem tired lately, he added. Those training sessions with what's his name? Leo? Must be intense. A flicker of something alarm perhaps crossed her face before she composed herself. They are. He pushes me hard, but that's what I'm paying for. Maybe I should join you sometime, Mark suggested, watching her reaction carefully. Oh, I don't think you'd enjoy it, she said quickly. It's very personalized to my fitness level. Besides, you have your own trainer at your gym. True, Mark conceded, letting the subject drop. That night, Mark sent a text to his brother. Need to talk. Important. Breakfast tomorrow? Matt's response came quickly. Usual place, 8 a.m. The next morning, Mark told Tessa he had an early meeting at the office. Another lie to counter hers. Matt was already at their usual breakfast spot, a quiet corner table at an upscale cafe that afforded privacy. This must be serious, Matt said as Mark sat down. Saturday morning meetings aren't your style. Mark looked his brother in the eye. Tessa is having an affair. Matt's expression hardened. You're sure? Mark pulled out his phone and showed him selected images from the surveillance report. I'm sure. Matt studied the photos, his attorney's mind already assessing the situation. How did you find out? I overheard her on the phone with Aubrey. Then, I hired Thomas to confirm it. Good move. What do you want to do? I don't just want to leave her, Matt. I want to destroy her. Matt nodded slowly, a calculating look in his eyes that mirrored Mark's own. Then let's start by cutting her off financially. They spent the next hour discussing strategy. Matt, an expert in high-net-worth divorces, outlined the steps to protect Mark's assets. We need to move quickly, Matt advised. Create irrevocable trusts, transfer company ownership to holding corporations, maximize the protection of the prenup. We need to ensure she has no claim to your wealth. Do whatever it takes, Mark said. Money is no object. And what about exposing the affair? Do you want to go public with it? Mark's expression turned cold. Not yet. I want to gather more evidence. I want it to be undeniable when I make my move. You're thinking long-term revenge, Matt observed. Not just a divorce. She played me, Matt. She married me for money, pretended to love me, all while planning her exit strategy. She deserves to lose everything. Matt didn't try to talk him out of it. The Whitmore brothers shared the same view on loyalty and betrayal. I'll start the paperwork today. In the meantime, act normal. Don't give her any reason to suspect you know. Don't worry, Mark said. She'll never see it coming. On Sunday, Tessa told Mark she was going shopping with friends. The surveillance team reported she spent 3 hours at Leo's apartment instead. When she returned, shopping bags in hand as props, Mark greeted her with a smile. Find anything good? Just a few things, she said, showing him purchases she'd actually made weeks earlier, according to the credit card statements Thomas had provided. Mark nodded appreciatively. They look great. You have excellent taste. Thank you, she said, rewarding his compliment with a kiss on the cheek. Mark allowed the contact, even as he pictured her with Leo hours earlier. His time would come. Patience was key. Over the next 5 days, Matt worked tirelessly to secure Mark's assets. Irrevocable trusts were established. Company ownership was restructured, and the prenuptial agreement was reviewed for any potential vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Mark collected more evidence. Thomas's team provided recordings of phone calls between Tessa and Aubrey, discussing their plan for Tessa to secure her future before leaving Mark. There were also conversations between Tessa and Leo, explicit and incriminating that on the 5th day, Mark didn't answer any of Tessa's calls. 27 of them in 1 hour. By the 27th call, he could imagine her panic, her fear that somehow he'd discovered her betrayal. When he finally returned home that evening, she was waiting by the door, her face a mask of worry. Where have you been? She demanded. I called you all day. Battery died, he lied smoothly. In back-to-back meetings. Is something wrong? The relief on her face was palpable. No, I was worried. You always answer your phone. I'm sorry, he said, kissing her forehead. I didn't mean to make you worry. That brief moment of fear that was just a taste of what was coming for her. Mark almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The following Saturday, Mark met Matt at his brother's office. The space was empty except for them, affording complete privacy. Matt had prepared extensive documentation. I've moved everything of value into protected entities, he explained, spreading papers across the conference table. Your personal accounts now contain only enough for normal expenses. Everything else is secure. Mark reviewed the documents carefully, signing where indicated. In the prenup, rock solid. She signed a clause specifically addressing infidelity. If she contests the divorce, we can use that to eliminate even the small settlement she would have received. Good. Mark looked up from the papers. Now, about exposing her affair. Matt leaned forward. Thomas has provided enough evidence for the divorce, but if you want to truly destroy her socially and financially, we need something more impactful. What do you have in mind? Video evidence. Undeniable, high-quality footage that leaves no room for her to claim misunderstanding or entrapment. Mark considered this. How will we get it? Your home security system is already top tier. We could enhance it, add cameras in strategic locations. She might notice new installations. Matt shook his head. Not with the equipment Thomas can provide. Professional grade, practically invisible. Consider it done. Matt gathered the signed documents. What's your timeline for all this? I'm planning a business trip to Chicago next month. That will be her opportunity to invite him over. And if she doesn't take the bait, Mark's expression darkened. She will. Trust me. Later that day, Mark met with his friend Devin at a private club where they could speak freely. She's cheating on you. Devin shook his head, anger evident in his expression. I never trusted her, Mark. Something always seemed off. You tried to warn me. Mark acknowledged. I should have listened. What are you going to do? Matt's handling the financial aspects. I need your help with something else. Devin leaned forward. Name it. The annual charity gala next month. I need to make sure Tessa's entire social circle is there. Her family, her friends, everyone she cares about impressing. Understanding dawned on Devin's face. You're planning something public. Very public, Mark confirmed. Consider it done. I'm on the planning committee. I'll make sure everyone on her contact list receives a personal invitation. One more thing, Mark added. I need control over the audio-visual setup that night. Devin raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. I'll arrange it. The pieces were falling into place. Mark returned home that evening to find Tessa preparing for a dinner party at her sister's house. Will you be joining us? She asked, adjusting her earrings in the mirror. Not tonight, Mark replied. I have some work to finish. Relief flashed briefly in her eyes. Don't work too hard. After she left, Mark called Thomas. I need the enhanced security system installed tomorrow while she's at her yoga class. Already prepared, Thomas assured him. My team will be in and out in 90 minutes. She'll never know we were there. The next day, as Tessa attended her regular yoga class, followed by what she claimed was coffee with a friend, but was actually a meeting with Leo, Thomas's team installed state-of-the-art hidden cameras throughout the house. Every room, especially the bedroom, was now monitored. Mark accessed the new system from a secure laptop that evening, verifying the video and audio quality. Crystal clear. Perfect for what he had planned. The system looks good, Thomas confirmed over the phone. You can access it remotely from anywhere with the secure credentials I sent you. And there's no way she'll discover the cameras? None. They're integrated with existing fixtures and architectural elements. You'd need specialized equipment to detect them. Mark thanked him and ended the call, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over him. The trap was set. Now he just needed to wait for Tessa to walk into it. Over the next 2 weeks, Mark accelerated his plan. He became more attentive, more affectionate. He surprised Tessa with expensive gifts, talked about their future together, even suggested they start thinking about having children. Tessa responded exactly as he'd anticipated, believing her manipulation was working. She became more confident, less careful. Her meetings with Leo increased in frequency. Meanwhile, Mark finalized arrangements for his fake business trip to Chicago, scheduled for the weekend before the charity gala. Perfect timing for what he had in mind. 2 days before his trip, Mark had dinner with his mother, Vivian. She'd never warmed to Tessa, her intuition detecting what Mark had been blind to. You seem different, Vivian observed over dessert. There's something in your eyes I haven't seen before. Mark considered how much to tell her. I'm dealing with a situation. At home. Vivian's gaze sharpened. Tessa. He nodded once. I knew that girl was trouble the moment I met her, Vivian said, no satisfaction in her tone, only concern for her son. What has she done? Let's just say your instincts were right all along. Are you leaving her? In a manner of speaking, Mark replied cryptically. Vivian studied him. Whatever you're planning, be careful it doesn't consume you, Mark. Revenge may be satisfying, but can also be corrosive. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Mother. I'm not suggesting forgiveness, Vivian clarified. I'm suggesting you don't let her take any more from you than she already has, including your peace of mind. Mark considered this. I appreciate your concern, but this is something I need to do. Vivian nodded, recognizing the resolute tone in her son's voice. Then do it thoroughly. Whitmores don't do anything halfway. The day before his supposed trip, Mark left a printout of his flight and hotel information on the kitchen counter, making sure Tessa would see it. That evening, he made love to her one last time, knowing it would be the final time he would touch her. In the morning, he kissed her goodbye, suitcase in hand. I'll be back Sunday night. Don't wait up. Have a safe trip, she replied, the eagerness in her eyes poorly concealed. Mark drove to a hotel on the other side of town, checked in under a false name provided by Thomas, and set up his laptop. The live feed from his home security system activated with a few keystrokes. Now all he had to do was wait. Mark sat in the hotel room, his laptop open before him, the live security feed showing his empty house. Tessa had left shortly after him, presumably to run errands, but Mark knew better. Thomas's surveillance team confirmed she had gone to a high-end lingerie store. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was preparing a special welcome for her lover in Mark's home, in his bed, using Mark's money to buy lingerie for another man. His phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Miss you already. Have a productive trip. Mark typed back. Missing you too. The house feels empty without you. Another lie to counter hers. The game they were playing had higher stakes than she realized. He ordered room service and worked on actual business while monitoring the security feed. At 5:30 p.m., Tessa returned home with shopping bags. Mark watched as she went upstairs to their bedroom and began preparing. She changed the sheets on their bed, applied fresh makeup, arranged candles around the room, opened a bottle of champagne, an expensive vintage from his private collection. He noted with bitter amusement. At 7:15 p.m., she slipped into black lingerie and a silk robe, then checked her phone. A text message notification appeared on the screen, captured perfectly by the hidden camera. On my way. Can't wait to see you. Well, Mark's jaw tightened. In their bedroom. In his house. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. At 7:43 p.m., the doorbell rang. Mark switched to the entryway camera. Leo Merrick stood at the door, a smug smile on his face. Tessa opened the door and immediately pulled him into a passionate kiss. I've been thinking about this all day, she said, her voice clear through the audio feed. Me too, Leo replied, his hands already roaming over her body. How long do we have? He's in Chicago until Sunday night. We have a whole weekend. Perfect, Leo murmured, following her inside. Mark watched as they moved through his house, stopping occasionally to kiss or remove articles of clothing. By the time they reached the bedroom, Leo was shirtless, and Tessa's robe had been discarded in the hallway. What happened next was exactly what Mark had expected, but still difficult to watch. Tessa and Leo fell onto the bed, his bed, their movements urgent and passionate. There was nothing tender or loving about their encounter, just raw physical need. Mark forced himself to watch, to record, to remember every moment of her betrayal. This wasn't just evidence for a divorce. This was fuel for his rage, justification for what he was about to do to her. He recorded everything from multiple angles. The hidden cameras captured crystal clear video and audio of their betrayal, leaving no room for denial or excuse. After they finished, Tessa and Leo lay in Mark's bed, drinking his champagne, laughing about their deception. He has no idea, Tessa said, running a finger down Leo's chest. He actually suggested we start thinking about having children. Leo laughed. Poor bastard. What did you tell him? That I was considering it. That I wanted to work on our relationship first. Tessa rolled her eyes. He ate it up. Men hear what they want to hear. How much longer do you think you need to stay with him? Tessa sighed. A few more months at least. My sister says the longer I'm married, the better position I'll be in during the divorce. I need to be strategic about this. And then what? Leo asked. You and me and Bali with his money. Something like that. Tessa replied with a smirk. Though, I might need to find someone with more stability than a personal trainer once the dust settles. No offense. Mark noticed the flash of irritation on Leo's face. So Tessa was using Leo just as she was using Mark. Interesting. No offense taken, Leo said after a moment. We're both just having fun, right? Right? Tessa agreed, though something in her tone suggested she wasn't being entirely truthful. Mark continued recording as they went for a second round, then a third. They used his shower, ate food from his refrigerator, drank more of his champagne. They fell asleep in his bed, Tessa's head on Leo's chest. Mark closed his laptop, unable to watch anymore. He had what he needed more than enough to destroy her completely. Now it was time to finalize the rest of his plan that he called Matt. It's done. I have the footage. How bad is it? Matt asked. Worse than I imagined. Not just the physical affair, but the things she said. She never loved me, Matt. It was all about the money. Matt's voice hardened. Then she deserves what's coming. Send me the files securely. I'll review them and extract what we need for maximum impact. Will do. And Matt, thank you for having my back on this. Always, his brother replied. No one messes with a Whitmore and walks away unscathed. After ending the call, Mark transferred the files to a secure server only he and Matt could access. Then he tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing, playing back Tessa's words and actions. By morning, his resolve had only strengthened. The next day, Saturday, Mark continued monitoring the feed. Tessa and Leo barely left the bedroom, except to eat or shower. They used every surface of the house, the kitchen counter, the living room sofa, even Mark's home office desk. Each new violation added fuel to Mark's determination. WY Sunday afternoon, Leo finally left, promising to see Tessa again soon. After he departed, Mark watched Tessa clean the house meticulously, removing every trace of their weekend together. She washed the sheets, aired out the rooms, replaced the champagne with an identical bottle from the wine cellar. At 8:30 p.m., Mark's phone rang. Tessa's face appeared on the screen. Hey, she said when he answered. How was Chicago? Productive, Mark replied, keeping his voice neutral. The clients were impressed with our proposal. That's great, she said. When are you coming home? Flight was delayed. I'll probably be back around midnight. Don't wait up. Okay. Safe travels. Love you. The words made his stomach turn. Love you too, he forced himself to say before hanging up at midnight. Mark returned home, finding Tessa pretending to be half asleep on the sofa, a book in her lap as if she tried to wait up for him despite his instruction not to. You're back, she said, feigning a yawn. I told you not to wait up, he said, setting down his suitcase. She stood and embraced him. I missed you. Mark returned the hug mechanically. Missed you too. How was your weekend? Quiet, she said. Just caught up on some reading and did some shopping. Another lie to add to her growing collection. Mark nodded, playing along. Sounds relaxing. How about you? Was the trip successful? Very, Mark said, and for the first time that weekend, he wasn't lying. Everything went exactly according to plan. Monday morning arrived, and Mark headed to the office as usual. Once there, he locked his door and called Matt. Did you review the footage? Mark asked without preamble. I did. Matt confirmed, his tone professional despite the personal nature of the content. It's comprehensive and damning. No judge would rule in her favor after seeing even a fraction of it. Good. Now we need to prepare for the gala. Are you sure about this, Mark? A private divorce will be cleaner. I'm sure. She humiliated me in private. I'll return the favor in public. Matt didn't argue further. All right. I prepared a highlight reel that's explicit enough to make the point, but not so graphic it would backfire on you. I've also drafted the divorce papers. They'll be ready for delivery at the gala. Perfect. And the financial arrangements? Complete. As of this morning, all joint accounts have been frozen. Your personal accounts are secured. She won't have access to anything once the papers are served. Mark nodded, satisfaction coursing through him. One more thing. I want you to invite Mother to the gala, but don't tell her why. I don't want her to try to talk me out of this. She wouldn't, Matt assured him. Mother despises betrayal as much as we do. Still, I'd rather she witness it with everyone else. As you wish. Anything else? Mark thought for a moment. Yes. Make sure Leo receives an invitation as well. I want him there when it happens. Consider it done. Throughout the week, Mark maintained his performance as the unsuspecting husband. He bought Tessa flowers, complimented her appearance, and discussed future plans as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, he monitored the security feed from his office, watching her continue her affair with Leo, albeit more cautiously now that Mark was back in town. They met at hotels at Leo's apartment, once even in her car in a secluded spot. Each encounter was recorded, added to the growing collection of evidence against her. 3 days before the gala, Mark finalized arrangements with Devin, who would ensure the audiovisual equipment was ready for Mark's presentation. Everything's set, Devin confirmed. The video will play on your command, full screen on all displays throughout the venue. Are you absolutely certain about this? Never been more certain of anything in my life, Mark replied. The night before the gala, Tessa seemed unusually attentive. She prepared his favorite meal, wore the dress he'd complimented last month, and suggested they open a bottle of wine. What's the occasion? Mark asked, accepting the glass she offered. Do I need an occasion to do something nice for my husband? She countered with a smile that now looked predatory to him. I suppose not. Thank you. They ate dinner, making small talk about the upcoming gala. Tessa mentioned her excitement about seeing certain friends and family members. Mark nodded, thinking about how those same people would look at her tomorrow night after his revelation. I bought a new dress for tomorrow, she said. Wait until you see it. I'm sure you'll look beautiful, Mark replied, meaning it despite everything. Tessa was physically stunning. It was one of the reasons he'd been blind to her true nature for so long. After dinner, she suggested they go to bed early. We should be well rested for tomorrow night. Mark agreed, following her upstairs. As she undressed, he caught her checking her phone. A text from Leo, no doubt. Mark pretended not to notice. They made love one final time, Mark going through the motions, disconnected from the act itself. Afterward, as Tessa slept beside him, he stared at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing every detail of tomorrow's plan. There would be no going back. No possibility of reconciliation. By this time tomorrow night, Tessa Whitmore would understand exactly what it meant to betray a man like him. The day of the gala arrived. Mark left for work as usual, but returned early to prepare. Tessa was still at the salon, getting her hair and makeup done for the evening. Good. He needed time alone in the house, that he went to his office and accessed the hidden camera footage, transferring the latest files to a secure drive. Then he accessed the AV system at the gala venue, verifying the setup with Devin remotely. Everything's ready, Devin confirmed. The files arrived and have been loaded into the system. Any technical issues? None. We ran a full test this morning. Crystal clear on all screens. Perfect. I'll see you tonight. Mark disconnected the call and went to prepare himself for the evening. He selected his finest suit, a black tuxedo tailored to perfection. As he adjusted his cufflinks platinum, a gift from his father, he heard Tessa return home. Mark? She called up the stairs. In the bedroom, he replied, straightening his bow tie. She appeared in the doorway, her hair and makeup immaculate. What do you think? She asked, twirling to show off her appearance. Beautiful, he said truthfully. The dress suits you. Tessa beamed, pleased with the compliment. I'll finish getting ready. The car will be here in 30 minutes. As she disappeared into her closet, Mark checked his phone. A text from Matt confirmed he had the divorce papers and would be at the gala early to coordinate with the servers. Everything was in place. Tonight, Tessa's carefully constructed world would come crashing down around her. The limousine arrived precisely on time. Mark helped Tessa with her wrap, noting the expensive diamond necklace. She wore another gift from him, ironically purchased around the time her affair with Leo began. Nervous? Tessa asked as they settled into the back seat. Why would I be nervous? Mark countered. She shrugged. You seem tense. Just thinking about work, he lied. The expansion is at a critical stage. Tessa placed her hand on his. Try to relax tonight. It's for a good cause, and everyone important will be there. Everyone important to you, Mark thought. That's the point. The drive to the venue took 20 minutes. As they approached, Mark could see the red carpet, the photographers, the social elite of their city arriving in their finest attire. The annual charity gala was the social event of the season, raising millions for children's education initiatives. Mark had been a major donor for years, his generosity earning him a place on the board of directors. Tonight, his donation would be particularly generous, given what he planned to achieve. They exited the limousine, smiling for the photographers. Tessa looked radiant, playing her part perfectly. She held Mark's arm, the picture of devoted wife to successful businessman. Inside, the grand ballroom had been transformed with elegant decorations, soft lighting, and dozens of round tables surrounding its central stage. A large screen dominated the back wall, currently displaying the charity's logo. Mark, Tessa. Devin approached, champagne flutes in hand. You both look spectacular. Thank you, Tessa said, accepting the champagne. The venue looks amazing. The committee outdid themselves this year. We had some extra help, Devin replied, exchanging a knowing look with Mark. The technical upgrades alone cost a small fortune. Worth every penny, Mark said, raising his glass slightly. To a memorable evening. They clinked glasses, Tessa oblivious to the subtext as they mingled. Mark noted with satisfaction that everyone on their list had attended. Tessa's sister Aubrey was there with her husband. Tessa's parents had made the trip from their vacation home. Her entire social circle, colleagues from her volunteer work, friends from her country club, all present to witness what was coming. Matt arrived, nodding discreetly to Mark. The signal that everything was prepared. And there, near the bar, stood Leo Merrick, looking uncomfortable in a rented tuxedo. He caught Tessa's eye across the room, and Mark watched their subtle exchange of fleeting glance, a small smile, a slight nod indicating they would find a moment alone later. Not if Mark had anything to say about it. Dinner was served, a 5-course meal prepared by a celebrity chef. Mark ate little, his attention focused on the timing of what was to come. The charity director gave a speech about the organization's accomplishments over the past year. A video played showing the impact of previous donations. Then it was time for Mark's address. As a major donor and board member, he had been asked to say a few words before the fundraising portion of the evening began. And now, the director announced, I'd like to invite Mark Whitmore to the stage to say a few words. Applause filled the room as Mark stood. Tessa squeezed his hand. Good luck, honey. He didn't respond, simply walked to the stage with measured steps. Standing at the podium, microphone before him, Mark surveyed the room. 300 of the city's wealthiest and most influential people looked back at him expectantly. Perfect. Good evening, he began. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Whitmore. My company, Whitmore Logistics, has been a proud supporter of this charity for the past decade. Polite applause. Tonight, I'd like to talk about values. About integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Mark paused, his gaze finding Tessa in the crowd. These are qualities I've always believed in, qualities I've tried to embody in my business and personal life. The room was silent now. Everyone's attention focused on him. Unfortunately, not everyone shares these values. Some people value material things more: money, status, appearance. They're willing to lie, to manipulate, to betray those who trust them, all in pursuit of these shallow goals. Confusion rippled through the audience. This wasn't the typical uplifting charity speech they'd expected. Mark continued, his voice growing colder. I recently discovered that my own wife, Tessa, is one of these people. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Tessa froze in her seat, her champagne glass halfway to her lips. For the past year, Tessa has been engaged in an affair with her personal trainer, Leo Merrick, who is also here tonight. Mark gestured toward the bar where Leo stood, now trying to back away unnoticed. I have proof of this affair, explicit, undeniable evidence that I'm about to share with all of you. Before I do, I want to make one thing clear. This is not about public humiliation for its own sake. This is about consequences, about ensuring that those who betray trust understand exactly what they've lost. Mark turned to the AV technician and nodded once. The large screen behind him flickered, and then the video began playing. The footage had been edited professionally, a montage of Tessa's betrayal. It began with clips of her phone conversations with Aubrey, discussing her plans to leave Mark once she'd secured enough money. Then came footage of her meetings with Leo in various locations. And finally, the most damning evidence. Tessa and Leo in Mark's bed, their actions explicit and unmistakable, their conversation afterward clear as crystal through the audio system. He has no idea. He actually suggested we start thinking about having children. Poor bastard. What did you tell him? That I was considering it. That I wanted to work on our relationship first. He ate it up. Men hear what they want to hear. The audience watched in stunned silence. Some turned away. Others stared in horrified fascination. Tessa's parents looked shell-shocked. Her sister, Aubrey, implicated in the footage, tried to shrink into her seat. Mark let the video play for exactly 3 minutes, long enough to make his point beyond any doubt, but not so long as to become gratuitous. Then he signaled for it to stop. The screen went black, and the silence in the room was deafening. Mark's gaze found Tessa, who sat frozen in her chair, her face drained of all color. Her eyes, wide with shock and horror, met his across the room. Mark approached her slowly, the entire room watching. When he reached her table, he leaned down, his voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You said marriage to me was a nightmare? Well, let me end it for you." Time seemed to stand still in the grand ballroom. 300 people held their breath, watching the drama unfold before them. Tessa sat motionless, her expression a mask of shock and horror. Mark stood over her, his posture rigid, his face impassive despite the storm raging inside him. Across the room, Leo Merrick was edging toward the exit, hoping to escape the impending fallout. Mark noticed and nodded to 2 security guards positioned by the doors. They moved smoothly to block Leo's path. He wasn't going anywhere. "Mark," Tessa finally whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, not here. We can discuss this privately." "Privately?" Mark interrupted, his voice carrying in the silent room. "Like how you privately discussed our marriage with your sister? Or how you privately invited your lover into our home, into our bed?" Tessa flinched as if struck. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Mark cut her off. "I understand that you married me for my money, that you never loved me, that everything between us was a lie." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several people had phones out, undoubtedly recording the confrontation. By morning, this would be all over social media, despite the gala's usual no-recording policy. "That's not true," Tessa protested weakly, aware of the audience watching her every move. "Isn't it?" Mark challenged. "Then explain the video everyone just saw. Explain why you told Leo that you were just waiting to secure your financial future before leaving me." She had no answer for that. Her gaze darted around the room, seeking allies, finding none. Even her sister, Aubrey, avoided eye contact, too implicated in the scandal to offer support. Mark turned to address the room. "I apologize to everyone for involving you in my personal troubles. This was not how any of us expected this evening to proceed. However, I believe in transparency, in truth, in consequences for one's actions." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the city's elite. "The funds I pledged to donate tonight will still be provided to the charity. The children shouldn't suffer because of adult betrayals." This gesture earned him a smattering of nervous applause. Mark had maintained the moral high ground, ensuring the charity didn't lose out while still achieving his objective of publicly humiliating Tessa. He turned back to Tessa, whose composure was rapidly crumbling. Tears streaked her perfect makeup. Her hands trembled violently. "Now," Mark said, his voice cold and precise, "for the final act of our marriage." He nodded to Matt, who stepped forward, a manila envelope in his hand. "Tessa," Matt said formally, "as Mark's legal representative, I'm serving you with divorce papers." He placed the envelope on the table before her. Tessa stared at it as if it might bite her. "The papers are fairly straightforward," Matt continued, his attorney persona in full effect. "Given the irrefutable evidence of your infidelity and the explicit clauses in your prenuptial agreement regarding such behavior, you will receive no financial settlement whatsoever." A collective gasp rippled through the room. In their social circle, Even cheating spouses typically walked away with something in a divorce. To receive nothing was unprecedented. Additionally, Matt added, all joint accounts have been frozen as of this morning. Your credit cards have been canceled. The lease on your car will not be renewed, and you are required to vacate the marital home within 48 hours. Tessa's head snapped up. That's impossible. Where am I supposed to go? Mark shrugged, unmoved by her distress. Perhaps Leo has room at his apartment, or your sister might take you in, considering she was so supportive of your affair. All eyes turned to Aubrey, who shrank further into her seat, her husband staring at her with dawning suspicion. You can't do this, Tessa whispered, desperation in her voice. You can't just leave me with nothing. Actually, I can, Mark replied. Everything is completely legal. The prenuptial agreement you signed is exceptionally clear about infidelity. You gambled and lost, Tessa. Her desperation turned to anger. You son of a... I wouldn't finish that sentence. Mark interrupted calmly. You're already the villain in this room. Don't make it worse for yourself. Tessa fell silent, realizing the truth of his words. She was surrounded by the very people whose opinion she valued most, the social elite, the wealthy circle she'd fought so hard to enter and maintain her position within. And they were all looking at her with disgust, judgment, or worst of all, pity. Mark stepped back from the table. I believe we've disrupted this charitable event enough. Sign the papers, Tessa. It's over. As if on cue, Matt produced a pen and placed it beside the envelope. The message was clear. There would be no negotiation, no discussion, no second chances. Tessa's gaze darted to Leo, who still stood by the exit, looking panicked and cornered. No help would come from that quarter. She was alone. With shaking hands, she opened the envelope and removed the papers. She scanned them briefly, her face paling further at the terms spelled out in legal language. Then, with a resigned slump to her shoulders, she signed her name on the indicated lines. Matt collected the papers, checking that all signatures were in place. It's done, he said to Mark. Mark nodded once, a weight lifting from his shoulders. It wasn't happiness. He felt the wounds of betrayal were still too fresh for that, but satisfaction. Justice. The beginning of closure. He turned to address the crowd one final time. Again, my apologies for the interruption to this evening's festivities. Please, continue with the gala. Your generosity tonight will help countless children achieve their educational dreams. With that, Mark walked toward the exit, head held high. As he passed Leo, he paused. You're welcome to her, he said quietly, though I suspect she'll be considerably less interested in you now that my money isn't part of the equation. Leo had no response, his face a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Mark continued on, out of the ballroom, into the cool night air. Behind him, the murmur of conversation gradually resumed, the scandal already being dissected by hundreds of eager tongues. By morning, everyone who mattered in their social and business circles would know exactly what Tessa had done and exactly what it had cost her. As Mark waited for the valet to bring his car, he heard hurried footsteps behind him. He turned to see his mother, Vivian, approaching. That was quite a spectacle, she said, her expression unreadable. Are you disappointed in me? Mark asked. Vivian considered the question. Disappointed? No. Concerned? Perhaps. She touched his arm gently. You did what needed to be done. She betrayed you in the worst possible way. But remember what I said about not letting her take your peace of mind. I won't. Mark assured her. This was necessary closure. Now I can move forward. Good. Vivian nodded approvingly. And for what it's worth, I never liked her. Too calculating. Too hungry for status. Despite everything, Mark found himself smiling slightly. You always were a good judge of character, Mother. Next time, perhaps you'll listen to me, she replied with a raised eyebrow. Next time? Mark agreed, though he wasn't sure there would be a next time. Trust, once shattered, was not easily rebuilt. His car arrived, and Mark opened the door for his mother. Would you like a ride home? Thank you, but no. Your brother is giving me a lift. I think you need some time alone. Mark couldn't argue with that. He needed space to process everything that had happened, to begin healing from Tessa's betrayal. Call me tomorrow, Vivian said, patting his cheek in a rare display of maternal affection. "I will," Mark promised, as he drove away from the venue. Mark glanced to the rearview mirror, catching a final glimpse of the building where his marriage had effectively ended. He felt no regret, no second thoughts. Tessa had made her choice, and now she was living with the consequences. That was the problem with betrayal. Once trust was broken, there was no going back. And some actions simply couldn't be forgiven. The morning after the gala, Mark woke in a hotel suite, having decided not to return to the house that still contained Tessa's belongings. He checked his phone to find dozens of missed calls and messages, some from friends offering support, others from journalists seeking comment on the scandal. He ignored them all and called Matt instead. "How are you holding up?" his brother asked by way of greeting. "Better than expected," Mark replied honestly. "What's the situation with Tessa?" "She spent the night at Aubrey's place. My contacts say she's been making frantic calls to various attorneys, but no one will take her case." "You're doing?" "Partly," Matt admitted. "Word spreads quickly in legal circles. But mostly it's the prenup and the evidence. No attorney wants to fight a losing battle, especially against our family." Mark nodded, though his brother couldn't see it. "What about the house?" "Security team is in place. She's scheduled to collect her personal items at noon. Everything will be supervised and inventoried." "Good. I don't want her taking anything that isn't explicitly hers." "Don't worry. The team knows what to watch for." After ending the call, Mark ordered breakfast and turned on the TV. As expected, the scandal had made the local morning news. The reporters were careful with their wording, but the story was clear. Prominent businessman Mark Whitmore had publicly exposed his wife's infidelity at the charity gala, serving her with divorce papers that left her penniless. Some commentators questioned the appropriateness of the venue, suggesting Mark could have handled the situation more discreetly. But most focused on Tessa's betrayal, particularly the calculated nature of her deception revealed in the video footage. Mark switched off the TV, satisfied with the coverage. His reputation might take a small hit for the public nature of the confrontation, but Tessa's was destroyed completely. At precisely noon, Mark received a call from the security team at his house. "Mr. Whitmore, Ms. Langley has arrived to collect her belongings." Mark noted the correction to Tessa's maiden name with satisfaction. "How was she behaving?" "Subdued, sir. She brought her sister to help. They're being efficient and haven't attempted to take anything not on the approved list. Keep me updated if anything changes." "Yes, sir." 3 hours later, the security team called again. Ms. Langley has completed the removal of her personal items. Everything was documented and photographed as instructed. "Did she say anything?" Mark found himself asking without a pause. "She asked if you would reconsider, sir. If there was any chance of reconciliation." Mark's laugh was cold. "And what did you tell her?" "That all communications should go through Mr. Matthew Whitmore, as specified in the divorce papers." "Perfect. Is the house secure?" "Yes, sir. All codes have been changed. Keys collected. Security system updated." "Thank you. I'll return tomorrow." That evening, Devin called to check on him. "The gala committee is in damage control mode," Devin reported. "But donations are up 30% from last year. Apparently, scandal is good for fundraising." "Silver lining," Mark remarked. "How are you really doing?" Devin asked, his tone shifting from business to concern. Mark considered the question seriously. "I'm angry, hurt, but also relieved. Like lancing a boil, painful, but necessary for healing." "Makes sense. What comes next?" "I focus on the company, on rebuilding my life without her, and personal relationships." Mark's response was immediate. "Not in the foreseeable future. Trust isn't something I give easily anymore." Devin didn't push the issue. "Well, when you're ready to rejoin the land of the living, I'm here. We can start with drinks, work our way up to double dates in a decade or two." That drew a genuine laugh from Mark. "I'll hold you to that." The following morning, Mark returned to his house for the first time since the gala. It felt different, emptier without Tessa's presence, but also cleaner somehow, as if a toxin had been removed from the environment. He walked through each room, noting the spaces where her possessions had been. The closet half empty of designer clothes. The vanity cleared of expensive cosmetics. The bookshelves missing the decorative objects she'd collected in the master bedroom. He stripped the bed completely, depositing the sheets in a garbage bag rather than the laundry. He would buy new everything: mattress, linens, pillows. He couldn't sleep where she had betrayed him with Leo. His phone rang, Matt's name appearing on the screen. Tessa's attorney finally made contact. Matt said without preamble, "I thought no one would take her case. She found someone desperate enough. Some ambulance chaser from the other side of town. They're making noise about challenging the prenup." "On what grounds?" Mark asked, unconcerned. "They're claiming emotional duress during signing and unequal power dynamics. It's weak, but they're desperate." "Will it hold up?" Matt's scoff was answer enough. "Not a chance. We have video evidence of her stating her explicit intentions to leave you after securing financial gain. No judge will rule in her favor." "How long will this delay things?" "A few weeks at most. It's merely a formality." Mark nodded. "Keep me posted." After hanging up, Mark continued his survey of the house. In his home office, he found a framed photo of their wedding day. Tessa looked radiant, her smile dazzling. Had it all been an act even then? Had there ever been any genuine feeling on her part? It didn't matter now. He removed the photo from the frame and tore it in half, dropping the pieces into the trash. A week later, Mark attended a meeting with Matt and Tessa's attorney, a nervous man named Harold Jenkins who kept mopping his brow with a handkerchief. Tessa sat beside him, dressed in clothes that were still expensive, but noticeably less so than her usual attire. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she wasn't sleeping well. "My client is willing to negotiate a more equitable settlement," Jenkins began, his voice reedy and uncertain. Matt's response was immediate and firm. "There will be no negotiation. The prenuptial agreement is binding and was signed without duress. Your client's infidelity is well documented and indisputable, but surely some accommodation." "No," Mark interrupted. "There will be no accommodation, no negotiation, no settlement." Tessa finally spoke, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "Mark, please. 5 years of marriage has to count for something." "It counted for nothing to you," Mark replied coldly. "Why should it matter to me?" "I made a mistake," she pleaded. "Everyone deserves a second chance." Mark leaned forward, his gaze boring into hers. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner. What you did was a calculated betrayal. You married me for money, planned to leave me once you'd secured enough, and cheated on me with your trainer in our home. There are no second chances for that level of betrayal. Not for me." Tessa's facade cracked further. "What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my concern," Mark said, unmoved by her distress. "You had a life before me. You'll have one after me, just without my money." Jenkins attempted another approach. "My client is willing to sign a confidentiality agreement regarding the incident at the gala in exchange for a reasonable settlement." Matt laughed outright at this. "The incident that 300 people witnessed, and that's already been covered by every news outlet in the city? That incident?" Jenkins wilted visibly. "Nevertheless, my client." "Your client has no leverage," Matt interrupted. "The prenup is ironclad. The divorce will be finalized within 30 days. Ms. Langley will receive nothing beyond her personal possessions, which she has already collected." "This is unconscionable," Jenkins protested weakly. "No," Mark said, standing to indicate the meeting was over. "What's unconscionable is marrying someone under false pretenses and betraying their trust. Everything else is just consequences." As Mark and Matt prepared to leave, Tessa made one final desperate attempt. "Mark, wait. We could try counseling. I could prove to you that I can change, that I can be the wife you deserve." Mark stopped at the door and turned to face her one last time. "The wife I deserve wouldn't have cheated on me in the first place." "Goodbye, Tessa." Outside the meeting room, Matt clapped a hand on Mark's shoulder. "You did well in there. Stayed firm without losing control." "It was easier than I expected," Mark admitted. Seeing her now, desperate, scrambling, "I feel nothing. No love, no hate, just indifference." "That's a good sign," Matt observed. "Indifference is the opposite of love, not hatred. You're already healing." Mark wasn't sure about that. The wound still felt raw. The betrayal still stung. But perhaps his brother was right. Indifference was the first step toward true healing. Over the next 3 weeks, Tessa made several more attempts to contact Mark directly, each rebuffed by Matt or Mark's assistant. Her desperation grew as the reality of her situation sank in. Her social standing had evaporated overnight. Former friends avoided her. Invitations dried up. Doors that had once been open to her as Mark Whitmore's wife were now firmly closed. The divorce was finalized exactly 30 days after the gala, as Matt had predicted. The judge, after reviewing the evidence and the prenuptial agreement, ruled entirely in Mark's favor. Tessa received nothing beyond the personal items she'd already collected on the day the divorce became official. Mark received a call from Devin. "Thought you might want to know Leo Merrick skipped town yesterday." "Where did he go?" Mark asked, more curious than concerned. "No idea, but he left owing 2 months' rent on his apartment and apparently took some cash from the gym where he worked. He abandoned Tessa," Mark stated rather than asked. "Completely. Word is she called him crying when she realized the divorce was final, and he told her he couldn't handle the drama and hung up on her." Mark wasn't surprised. Leo had never struck him as the type to stick around when things got difficult. "How did you hear about this?" "Small world," Devin replied vaguely. "People talk, especially about scandals this juicy." After ending the call, Mark sat in his office, contemplating this new information. Leo's abandonment of Tessa wasn't surprising, but it did complete the circle of her downfall in a way that felt almost poetic. She had betrayed Mark for Leo, and now Leo had betrayed her in turn. That evening, Mark received an unexpected visitor. His mother arrived unannounced, bearing a bottle of his favorite scotch. "I thought you might need company tonight," Vivian said, stepping into the foyer. "How did you know the divorce was finalized today?" Mark asked, taking her coat. Vivian gave him a look that suggested the question was naive. "I know everything that happens in this family, Mark. You should know that by now." He led her to the living room, where she poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed one to him. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To consequences," Mark countered, clinking his glass against hers. They drank in companionable silence for a moment before Vivian spoke again. "I heard Leo Merrick abandoned her." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Your sources are as good as Devin's, it seems." "Better," Vivian corrected with a small smile. "I also know she's been evicted from her sister's guest house." Apparently, Aubrey's husband wasn't thrilled about his wife's role in the affair. "Where will she go?" Mark found himself asking, though he'd told Tessa it wasn't his concern. "Back to her parents, for what I hear." Tail between her legs, dreams of wealth and status thoroughly crushed. Mark nodded, finding no satisfaction in the image. The anger that had fueled his revenge was fading, leaving behind a hollow feeling he couldn't quite identify. Vivian studied him carefully. "Having second thoughts?" "No," Mark said firmly. "She made her choices. I made mine. But revenge isn't as satisfying as you thought it would be," Vivian completed his thought. "Something like that." Vivian sipped her scotch. "It rarely is, in my experience. The anticipation is often sweeter than the reality." "Do you think I went too far?" Mark asked, genuinely curious about his mother's opinion. "No," Vivian replied without hesitation. "She betrayed you in the most intimate way possible. She planned to use you and discard you. Your response was proportionate to the offense." Mark nodded, relieved by his mother's assessment. "The question now," Vivian continued, "is what comes next for you. Revenge has consumed your energy for months. What will fill that void?" It was a good question, one Mark hadn't fully considered. "Work, I suppose. The company expansion. That's a start," Vivian acknowledged. "But there's more to life than business success, Mark. You know that. If you're suggesting I start dating again." "I'm suggesting no such thing," Vivian interrupted. "You need time to heal, to rebuild your capacity for trust. I'm merely pointing out that defining your life solely in opposition to Tessa, even in her absence, still gives her power over you." Mark considered this, recognizing the wisdom in his mother's words. "So what do you suggest?" "Live well," Vivian said simply. "Not to spite her, but because you deserve happiness. Travel. Pursue interests outside work. Reconnect with friends. Build a life so full and satisfying that when you think of Tessa, If you think of her at all, it's with complete indifference. Mark raised his glass. To living well, then. Vivian clinked her glass against his. To living well. As they finished their drinks, Mark felt something shift inside him, not healing exactly, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of it. The first step toward a future defined by his own choices rather than Tessa's betrayal. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Mark had settled into a new routine. He threw himself into work, overseeing the company expansion with meticulous attention to detail. The distraction was welcome, keeping his mind occupied during the day. Evenings were harder. The empty house, a constant reminder of Tessa's betrayal and absence. Following his mother's advice, Mark had begun to rebuild a life beyond work and beyond the shadow of his failed marriage. He reconnected with old friends, joined a boxing gym to channel his lingering anger, and even booked a solo trip to New Zealand for the following month, somewhere he'd always wanted to visit, but Tessa had vetoed. News of Tessa reached him occasionally through the inevitable social grapevine. She had indeed moved back in with her parents, finding no welcome among the social circles she'd once frequented. Her attempts to revive her social standing had failed spectacularly. The scandal was still too fresh, the video evidence too damning for rehabilitation. Mark had just returned from a satisfying session at the boxing gym when his phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, he would have let it go to voicemail, but something compelled him to answer. Hello. Silence for a moment, then, Mark, it's me. Tessa's voice. He almost hung up immediately, but curiosity won out. What do you want? I need to talk to you. Her voice sounded different, smaller, devoid of its usual confidence. Please. We have nothing to discuss. Mark replied coolly. Any communication should go through Matt. Please, she repeated, desperation evident. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Mark should have refused. Should have hung up and blocked her number. But a part of him, the part that had once loved her, wanted to hear what she had to say. 5 minutes, he agreed reluctantly. Say what you need to say. He could hear her take a deep breath. I'm calling from a motel, she began. I've been staying here for the past week. My parents, they couldn't deal with the shame anymore. Asked me to leave until things blow over. Mark said nothing, waiting for her to continue. I have nowhere to go, Tessa admitted, her voice breaking slightly. No money, no friends, no prospects. Leo is gone. Aubrey won't return my calls. Everyone I thought would stand by me has abandoned me. That's unfortunate, Mark said, deliberately keeping his tone neutral. But I don't see how it involves me. Mark, I made a mistake. The words seemed to cost her greatly. A terrible, unforgivable mistake. I know that now. Is that why you called? To tell me something I already know? No, I called to ask if there's any chance at all that you might reconsider. Not the divorce, she added quickly. That's done. But maybe some kind of settlement? Just enough to get me on my feet. To start over somewhere new. Mark almost laughed at the audacity of the request. Let me make sure I understand. You married me for my money, cheated on me, planned to leave me once you'd secured enough financial gain. And now that your plan has failed spectacularly, you want me to give you money anyway. When you put it like that, how else should I put it, Tessa? That's exactly what happened. I know, she admitted. And I know I don't deserve your help. But I'm desperate, Mark. I have nothing left. For a brief moment, Mark felt a flicker of pity. Then he remembered her voice on the phone with Aubrey, discussing him as if he were nothing but a meal ticket. Remembered her with Leo in their bed, laughing about his suggestion they start a family. You're right, he said coldly. You don't deserve my help. Mark, please. No, Tessa. You made your choices. Now you're living with the consequences. That's how the world works. A sob came through the phone. What am I supposed to do? That's not my problem anymore, Mark replied. You were so confident in your ability to manipulate people for your own gain. I suggest you apply those skills to your current situation. Mark, I made a mistake. He chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. No, I made a mistake marrying you, but I fixed it. With that, Mark ended the call, blocking the number immediately afterward. He stood in his kitchen, phone in hand, a complex mix of emotions washing over him: satisfaction, vindication, but also a strange sense of closure. Tessa had reached the bottom. She'd lost everything: money, status, social standing, even her dignity. The woman who had so carefully calculated her path to wealth and security now found herself in a cheap motel with nowhere to go and no one to turn. It was exactly what Mark had wanted when he'd first discovered her betrayal. So why didn't he feel more satisfied? His phone buzzed with a text from Devin. Drinks tonight? New bar downtown opened last week. Mark considered the invitation, then replied, sure. Could use a night out. He placed his phone on the counter and went to shower, the conversation with Tessa already receding in importance. She was part of his past now, not his future. What happened to her from this point forward was her concern, not his. That evening, as Mark met Devin at the new bar, he found himself thinking less about Tessa and more about the company expansion, his upcoming trip to New Zealand, the boxing tournament his gym had encouraged him to enter. You seem different tonight, Devin observed over their second round of drinks. More relaxed. Do I? Mark considered this. I had an interesting phone call today. From Tessa. Devin's eyebrows shot up. No kidding? What did she want? Money, of course. She's staying at some cheap motel, apparently. Parents kicked her out. And I said no. Hung up on her. Devin studied him carefully. You don't seem as, I don't know, vengeful as I'd expect. Mark shrugged. What's the point? She's ruined. Her life, as she knew it, is over. Nothing I could do to her now would match what she's already experiencing. So it's over? Really over? It is for me, Mark replied, surprised to find he meant it. She'll always be the mistake I made and corrected. But she doesn't get to be anything more than that, not an ongoing source of anger. Not someone I waste energy hating. Devin raised his glass. To moving on, then. To moving on. Mark agreed, clinking his glass against his friend's. Later that night, as Mark drove home, he reflected on how much had changed in the months since he'd overheard Tessa's phone conversation with Aubrey. He'd discovered his wife's betrayal, meticulously planned, and executed his revenge, and now found himself on the other side, wounded, but healing, betrayed, but wiser. He pulled into his driveway, noticing for the first time in months that the house didn't feel like a monument to Tessa's betrayal anymore. It was just a house's house, and he could make of it what he wanted. Mark entered the empty foyer, but instead of the loneliness that usually greeted him, he felt something different. Possibility. The freedom to redefine his life on his own terms, without Tessa's manipulation or betrayal hanging over him. He walked to the living room and poured himself a small measure of scotch, raising the glass in a silent toast to himself. He had survived the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger for it. Not unscathed, certainly, but intact, resilient. Some people might have forgiven Tessa, might have tried to salvage something from the wreckage of their marriage. But Mark wasn't built that way. Betrayal, once committed, could never be undone. Trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. Some lines, once crossed, allowed for no return. And he was at peace with that, with who he was and the decisions he'd made. Tomorrow, life would continue. The company would demand his attention. Plans would need to be made, decisions taken, a future constructed one day at a time. But tonight, in the quiet of his home, Mark acknowledged the chapter that had closed. Tessa was gone, not just from his house and his life, but increasingly from his thoughts. Her betrayal had shaped him, hardened him in some ways, but it would not define him. He finished his scotch and headed upstairs, leaving the ghosts of his failed marriage behind. Tomorrow was a new day. He intended to meet it on his own terms. 1 year later, Mark stood at the window of his office, looking out at the city skyline. Whitmore Logistics had completed its expansion ahead of schedule and under budget. The company's value had nearly doubled, and acquisition offers had begun to arrive with increasing frequency. On a personal level, Mark had found a new rhythm to his life. The trip to New Zealand had led to others: Japan, Argentina, South Africa. He'd won his boxing weight class in the amateur tournament. He'd reconnected with old friends and made new ones that he hadn't dated. Not seriously. There had been a few dinners, casual evenings that never progressed beyond polite conversation. He wasn't ready. Perhaps he never would be. The capacity for trust that Tessa had damaged might never fully recover, and he was fine with that. His life was full in other ways that a knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Rebecca, entered with a concerned expression. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a call. I think you might want to take it." "Who is it?" Mark asked, turning from the window. Rebecca hesitated. "Tessa Langley." Mark's expression revealed nothing, though the name still triggered a complex mix of emotions. "Put it through," he said after a moment. Rebecca nodded and left. Seconds later, his phone rang. Mark picked it up. "This is Mark Whitmore." "Mark." Tessa's voice was so different from how he remembered it, subdued, lacking the confident charm she'd once wielded so effectively. "Thank you for taking my call." "What do you want, Tessa?" Direct, businesslike. This wasn't a social call, and they both knew it. "I'm leaving town," she said. "For good this time. Moving to Arizona. My cousin has a job for me there." "Congratulations," Mark replied, genuinely not caring one way or the other. "Is there a reason you're telling me this?" A pause. "I wanted to clear the air, I suppose. Before I go." "The air is clear, Tessa. Has been for a long time." "Not for me," she admitted. "I've spent the past year thinking about what I did, what I lost, who I became." Mark waited, saying nothing. "I want you to know that I'm sorry," Tessa continued when it became clear he wouldn't respond. "Truly sorry. Not just for getting caught, not just for losing everything, but for what I did to you. The trust one betrayed. The love I threw away. Love." Mark couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "You never loved me, Tessa. You made that abundantly clear." "That's not true," she insisted. "I did love you in the beginning, but I was broken somehow. Greedy. Never satisfied. I convinced myself that money and status were more important than genuine connection." "And now?" Mark asked, more curious than invested in her answer. "Now I know better. Now I understand what I destroyed. What I can never get back." Mark considered her words, trying to detect any manipulation, any angle she might be working. But she sounded sincere. Broken, as she described herself, but sincere. "I appreciate the apology," he said finally. "But it doesn't change anything, Tessa." "I know," she replied quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I recognize the magnitude of what I did, that I'll carry that regret for the rest of my life." Mark found himself nodding, though she couldn't see it. "I hope Arizona works out for you. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." "Thank you," she said, audible relief in her voice at his lack of hostility. "Can I ask you one thing before I go?" "You can ask." "Are you happy, Mark? Really happy?" The question caught him off guard. He considered it seriously before answering. "I'm at peace. I've rebuilt my life. The company is thriving. I have good friends, family who support me. Is it the life I imagined when I married you? No, but it's a good life. An honest one. I'm glad," Tessa said, and she sounded like she meant it. "You deserve that. You always did." Mark wasn't sure how to respond to that. After a moment of silence, he said simply, "Goodbye, Tessa. I wish you well." "Goodbye, Mark. And thank you for taking my call, for listening." Mark set the phone down, staring at it for a long moment. He wasn't sure what he'd expected to feel at hearing from Tessa again: anger, perhaps, or the cold satisfaction he'd felt during their last conversation a year ago. Instead, he felt nothing. No anger, no bitterness, no lingering attachment. She was a chapter in his life that had ended, a lesson learned at great personal cost. He turned back to the window, to the city spread out before him. His city, his life, his future, unburdened by the weight of betrayal and revenge that had consumed him for so long. Mark Whitmore smiled faintly at his reflection in the glass. He had survived. More than survived, he had thrived. And that, in the end, was the best revenge of all.